What's going on, everybody? This is JT with the Mix by JT podcast. Look, we've made it to episode 5. The name of this episode is called Keeping Your Head in the Game. But before we get too far in the podcast, I just want to remind everybody that this podcast is self-funded by me, JT. So my website is www.mixbyjt.com. If you watch it on YouTube, make sure you click that like and subscribe channel. If you are listening to it on an Apple Music, not the Apple Music, but the Apple Podcast app, make sure you hit that subscribe button and get those notifications, man. And make sure you go support the merch. And if you need any audio engineering services, make sure that you reach out to me on my website, www.mixbyjt.com. Look, so let's go ahead and get into the podcast. My goal when I do these podcasts is to inspire and empower artists, musicians, engineers, anybody who may be listening to take their craft to the next level. And the reason why I talk for an hour straight raw, because I look at it like, if you got the opportunity to have lunch with me and pick my brain for about an hour, I'm hoping that whoever is listening to this podcast who really wants to take their craft to the next level can take their craft to the next level. I'm talking about somebody may be listening to this podcast who has a job, who may want to quit their job and pursue music full time. I've been there, and I had a plan, and it didn't come easy. It probably took me about 5 years to really transition and get up out that job, especially in a market like Jackson, Mississippi, where there is no market. You can look it up on the BLS website. That's a governmental website, Department of Bureau of Labor and Statistics or something, BLS.gov or something. Go look it up. Anyway, you can look on that website and see what the numbers are in Jackson, Mississippi. So I'm not bragging on myself, but when I'm making this podcast, I'm letting you know that I'm somebody who really got it up out the mud and made a way out of no way, and I created something right here in Jackson, Mississippi. So if I can do it in a small city such as Jackson, Mississippi, you can do it too anywhere in the country, or you can do it too right here in Jackson, Mississippi. So we're talking about keeping your head in the game. Man, this music is like a sport. Engineering, it's like a sport, man. You got to be an athlete with it. This game is highly competitive. And I use that analogy because it's 100% true, because in order to get paid off being an engineer, singer, songwriter, producer, anything in the music industry, you have to perform at a high level. And not only do you have to perform at a high level, you are expected, when somebody book you, to produce a professional product. Every athlete has been in a position where they may have a bad game. The greatest athletes may not be hot all the time. But when you are a musician, you are expected to be consistent. When you are an audio engineer and someone books you to do a mix, you are expected to be able to produce a professional quality mix every time. And a lot of people don't understand that. I can't produce a great mix this week and don't produce a great mix next week. When a client comes to the studio, I can't produce a bad product one week and produce a good product the next week. when you have a studio or when you work at a studio, when you're an audio engineer, you got to treat every session like this is your first session, and you got to treat it like it's your last session. Because if you play around with this music, these clients will humble you real quick. Trust me, it happens. If you do a good job, you weren't going to get a compliment. If you do an excellent job, you may get a compliment. But if you do a bad job, it's a guarantee that people are going to try to burn you. When clients come into the studio, it gotta sound A1. Regardless if you charge $25 for studio time or $250 for studio time. When a client leaves the studio and play the music in their car, it gotta be banging 5 seconds after they leave the studio. If it's not banging in the car when the client leaves the studio, they aren't going to come back. As a tracking engineer, you may not have an opportunity to go do a car test before the client leaves the studio. If you're doing a live mix, you may have 15 minutes max in a lot of situations to put this together. You don't have time to stop the Pro Tools, rewind it, play it back, put it on a loop, spend an hour to do a mix. When you're mixing live, it has to sound right immediately. So what I'm trying to tell people is that you got to be consistent. If you are an audio engineer, your goal should be to do 200 to 250 mixes a week. Not a week, I apologize, a year. That's the sweet spot. Just to keep your skills right, that means that you should be doing 4 to 5 mixes a week. If you're a live audio engineer, you should be doing 4 to 5 mixes a week. What does that look like for me? On Sunday, I'm doing 3 live mixes. Monday, it's a rehearsal. Tuesday, I'm in the studio all day. Wednesday, another service. Thursday, another rehearsal. I may have 2 to 3 live events per week. You do the math. So when people look at my schedule, they look at it like, man, you busy. You got a lot going on. But if you are an audio engineer and you aren't fully booked, you aren't booked. It's no in between. So 50 weeks out the year, if you are an audio engineer, you should be booked. If you aren't, it may be a skill set issue. So if you are an audio engineer, and I'm talking about it from that perspective, but I can say if you are a singer, if you are a professional musician, you are expected to perform on a top-notch level 100% of the time. Even athletes don't have that level of performance 100% of the time. So you really have to go hard or harder than your favorite basketball or football player with this. It's no reason to really play around with this thing. Like, you really gotta be in that mental space, and it's really harder to produce and be consistent on a frequent basis than a lot of people realize. So in this podcast, what I want to do for the people who may be watching or the people who may be listening, I want to really teach you and give you the game on this podcast on how to keep your head in the game and how to stay consistent. So I don't want to focus on the entertainment aspect. Like, I really want people to get this because I really want people to be able to get paid. So step one, if you want to keep your head in the game, if you want to be consistent, you have to keep training. Never do something great and take it for granted. What do I mean by that? You have to keep yourself level-headed. You have to keep your mentals in the same spot. Don't let clients hype you up. You do a great mix and the client is excited, and they pumping you up, telling you that this is the greatest mix ever. You can't allow yourself to get wrapped up in that and get the big head, because the thing is, when you get arrogant, when you think that you have it all figured out, you're going to get humbled very quickly, because if you allow yourself to get the big head, if you allow yourself to get caught up in the fanfare, you won't do the work. And I just put it on a side note. If you're an audio engineer, let other people tell you how great you are. Don't go around arrogant, bragging on how good your mix is. I know people who are multi-platinum, have Grammys, this, that, and the other. And I don't see them going around bragging on how good their mix is. But I see people on the low end, no Grammys, never been on tour, this, that, and the other. All they can talk about is how good their mix is. I see artists hadn't even sold 1,000 records, hadn't even did 150,000 streams, which when you look at the album equivalent, 150 streams is the equivalent of selling one record. So you can have artists hadn't did 150,000 streams, hadn't even sold 1,000 records, who aren't even relevant, who would say that they are the best artists ever. So you have to humble yourself. Now, I will say, on the flip side, you got to keep training, because you can talk noise, in my opinion. You can talk noise if you can back it up. People don't have to like you. You can be the person that people like to hate. What do I mean by that? One of the greatest boxers of all time. This may be debatable. People have opinions. That's fine. But the numbers don't lie. Undefeated records don't lie. And you probably know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather talks a lot of trash. But the thing is, when people get in that ring, they can't knock him out. There are people who are spending a lot of money on the pay-per-views just to see him get knocked out. They want to see him fall. But the thing is, Floyd Mayweather trains so hard. Floyd Mayweather is so good at what he do that when you get in a ring, you can't knock him out. So the more noise you talk, the harder you have to train, because when you say that you are the best artist, when you say that you're the king of this, when you say that you are the king of that, somebody is going to come test you. Somebody is going to call you out. So you have to make sure, if that's the route you want to go, you have to be especially prepared for the opposition. But what I would recommend people do, man, like, let the numbers talk. I'm not going to go out there and talk noise about how good my mix is. I let the people make that decision. Because when you're mixing live, when you're mixing for thousands of people on a weekly basis, you have thousands of opinions, and it only take a few opinions to dissect that whole entire live mix. When you are mixing on a studio track, you have thousands of opinions because this is the thing. If your mix isn't good and you're mixing for an artist, fact of the matter, they aren't going to sell records. I've seen seasoned veterans mess this thing up. I mean, as a recording engineer, as a tracking engineer, when you have seen records come off your Pro Tools sounding great, go to the next level and go to the next level, it end up sounding bad. Like, regardless of what record you own, regardless of what level you own, regardless of how many platinum albums you did, regardless of how many Grammys that you have won, man, if somebody send you a record and you don't put your heart and soul into that record, you can produce a bad mix. That's why I tell artists, man, new artists want to work with engineers that have been mixing for 30, 40 years. That's fine. But it's a lot of newer engineers who may be emerging. I'll just plug myself in, who could get you that same product or better, who haven't won Grammys, who haven't won platinum plaques. Because the thing about somebody like me is I'm hungry. I want to eat. My reputation is on the line every mix. If you're a singer, you got to look at it the same way. You got to look at it like, man, I'm hungry. I hadn't sold 1 million records. I hadn't got a record deal. So on every song that I do, I'm hungry. I'm going to kill it. I'm going to body it. Rappers, when you come in the studio, man, you got to look at it like this. You can't be in a studio gambling haphazardly. You got to look at, man, I got this beat and I'm going to kill it. And I'll follow that lead, and I'll say this. When you come to the studio, do not come to the studio unprepared. You got to be a beast at this thing. So I would give a word of advice. I tell rappers, rap to the metronome. Practice counting your bars. Practice writing a verse in 15 minutes or less, 5-10 minutes, writing 16 bars, and be able to go in the booth, do that 16 bars straight through. Because when you go do a show, it's not going to be any punching in and punching out. When you are a singer, when you go do a show, when you're up and coming, it's not going to be no auto-tune at that show. And if that music go off, which is going to go off, you are going to have to prove to that audience that you can sing. So my word of advice to anyone who's in the game, to anyone who's got coming up in the game, man, you got to train. You got to look at like you're trying to get to the Olympics in a rap game. If you're a singer and you're trying to be the best in the world, you got to compete like it's a such thing as going to the Olympics with it. You got to train. You got to live that lifestyle. Otherwise, yeah, I hate to break the news to you, but you're not going to make it. So I don't want people to listen to this podcast and be discouraged. Like, I really want people to listen to this podcast to be motivated to really like step it up. And as a host on this podcast, I don't want people to think that I'm not living the life that I'm talking about. Like, I'm not about that life. Like, These are the things that I have to do to stay relevant. These are the things that I have been doing in the shadows since 2016 that nobody knew about. And I say 2016, I've been into live since 2015. And when I got into live, I didn't look at it like, man, I've been working on studio records. I know what I'm doing. I took the time to relearn my craft, and I just took the time to work like crazy. At that time, Patchwork was doing a workshop like once a month. Shout out to Patchwork Studios. If it wasn't for Patchwork Studios, I wouldn't be where I am today as an audio engineer. They influenced an entire generation. So every month I used to go to a workshop at Patchwork Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It used to be like a 6-hour trip. Used to have to wake up at like 2 a.m. and go to these workshops, because I think they used to start at like 10, and you lose an hour going from Central Time to Eastern Time. So we would get there like an hour before the workshop or something like that. So when we came to the workshop, I used to travel with BA to the workshop. Shout out to BA. We used to show up to the workshop over at Patchwork before everybody in Atlanta used to show up to the workshop, because we looked at it like we really wanted to get the information. So I'm telling you, these are the things that you have to do. Your journey may be a little bit different, but these are the things that you have to do when no one is watching. Like, you have to be putting in that hard work. You got to be taking your craft seriously. So you have to keep training. You have to keep learning. You have to keep getting better as an artist, engineer, or producer. You don't come to the studio to practice. You come to the studio to work. Another thing, you have to stay focused. When you are an artist, and 9 times out of 10, most people who do music have jobs during the day. It's been proven, this is just science, that the mind only has the ability to really focus about 3 hours a day. Jobs are very unique from the aspect of jobs want you to be productive 8 hours of the day. You work 2 hours, then have a 15-minute break, then work for another hour, 45 minutes. You have a 1-hour lunch, then you do the same thing again. Then you have to drive home in rush hour traffic. And you have to be focused when you drive, and incorporate that into the drive to work. And you may have been focused for a period of 9 to 10 hours a day, because when you're at work, they won't let you not focus. When you are working, they won't let you slack up. So when you get off work and you have to do the creative side, it's hard for you to get into that mindset. And trust me, I know what that's all about. But I will tell people that if you have a full-time job, even part-time, quitting your job isn't going to help you get that focus. Trust me. I know for a fact, because when you leave a job in the first month, I mean, you're happy. You're like, oh my God, like I have all this freedom. I can't believe it. Then after about 4 to 5 weeks, it hits you like, oh crap. Like, I'm an entrepreneur, and yeah, I gotta actually work harder being an entrepreneur for myself than I was working at the job. And let me elaborate on that. When you work as an employee, you have a bookkeeper, you have an HR department. I mean, you have a manager, you have somebody to do the books, you have a president, you have other employees to help you. When you work a job, you have a whole team, you have a secretary, you have someone to answer phones. 9 times out of 10, they may not even be in an office in another part of the country, but you know what I'm saying? You have a whole team of people with you who are working 40 hours a week, just like you are, making a salary. When you go into business, guess who the bookkeeper is? You. When you are in business, guess who's the salesperson? Guess who's the lead salesperson? You. When you go into business for yourself, guess who's the VP? You. And when you go into business, you can figure out like, okay, I'll just use this analogy. When a lot of people see the person who they refer to as their boss in the office, they feel like this person may not be doing any work. But when you really get into it, you realize that, okay, as an entrepreneur, when you're sitting in front of that computer, even though you may not be doing the blue collar, even though you may not be doing the physical work, it's very mentally taxing because it takes concentration. And you can get tired from doing mental work, and you can get tired from doing physical work. So when you are coming from a creative place, it's hard for you to focus on being creative when you are mentally tired. So you have to get to a point where you can condition your mind in order to produce a product. And when you are an artist, how do you produce art when you're tired? When you are an artist, if you aren't in a happy place, how can you produce art? And this is the secret. Everyone says that they are going to do a record next year, or just say like 2023 is about to come. We got 6 more months in a year. I'm currently recording this podcast in July 2022. If anybody is listening to this in the future, which I imagine that you will be. So January 2022, everybody swore that they were going to drop a record. It's 6 months into the year. Nobody has dropped a record. I'm not going to say nobody, but you know what I'm saying? Most of the people who were claiming that they were going to do something, they made an announcement. They had release dates. And you look at, okay, no records, because this is what happened. You can have the best intentions. You can say that you are going to do something, but you can go through a situation. Just some people call it life. You can go through a situation that will literally take your head out the game. So how do I stay focused as a creative? And what I'm about to say is about to be real good. You have to have a quick rebound time. When I say quick rebound time, I just say within 24 hours. Procrastination is a thing, being a creative. Everybody does it. But just say, like, if you are worn out, your body is drained, and you can't do it today, and you say, I'm going to do it tomorrow. All right. If you do not do it the following day, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, 999 times out of 1,000, you aren't going to get it done. So if you say you're going to do it next week is going to turn into next month is going to turn into next year is going to turn into next few years. So do not allow yourself, even though you're worn out, to procrastinate, because this is what's going to happen. Your brain, you have to look at your brain as it's a physical muscle, because it is. You can make your brain stronger, just like you can make your muscle stronger. So if you put off going to the gym just because you are in pain or just because you're tired, you're going to miss out on a great workout. Now, I will say, you have to rest your muscles. You have to give your muscles time to recover. If you don't, your muscles aren't going to grow. Your brain is the same way. You have times where you go hard, but you have to know times where you have to get that rest. So I will say that 24-hour time span is what I would call strategic rest. It's something called mindfulness that you need to know about. It's something called meditation that you need to know about, because what's going on now is through electronics, through modern electronics in the modern era, is as consumers, we're overstimulating our brain. And even Apple has caught on to this. Apple sells iPhones. Apple wants people to be engaged with their products. I want you to be engaged with this podcast on your iPhone. Like, that's just the way it is. But I also want you to be responsible and know that sometimes you have to unplug from technology. People ask me all the time what type of music that I listen to as an audio engineer. And I explain to people that outside of audio engineering, I do strategic ear rest. People don't realize that the ears are like a muscle. If you overwork your muscles, they won't function like they should function. If you overwork your ears and you are an audio engineer, they will cease to function. You will not be able to listen in detail if you do not take care of your ears as an audio engineer. So when I'm mixing in the studio, I'm mixing at a low volume. When I'm mixing a concert, yes, I'm cognizant of my dB levels. Is I may have a loud mix when it needs to be loud, but when it doesn't need to be loud, I bring it down. And I make sure that my ears aren't exposed to a high decibel level over the recommended period of time if necessary. If they are, I may take days resting my ears, or as much as possible. So outside of audio engineering, outside of mixing, if I'm riding in the car, sometimes I can be riding in the car, I don't have any music playing. And when I do listen to something, it may be spoken word. I don't put earbuds in my ears. When I listen to music, it's at an extremely low level. And it drives people crazy if they're riding in a car with me and they turn the radio up and I turn the radio down, and I explain, look, I'm an audio engineer, man. Like, I'm resting my ears. It goes completely over their heads. But I'm telling you, it sounds weird, but I'm telling you, if you are an audio engineer, you cutting the grass, use earplugs. If you're at the range, you can get away with using a single set of earplugs if you are a normal person, or just earmuffs. But if you are an audio engineer and you go to the range, you have to wear double ears. I'm telling you, like, as an audio engineer, you do this music so much where if you don't rest your ears, you won't be effective. Get a good pair of studio monitors where you can listen in detail at low volume. That's the only way as an audio engineer that you're really going to get a great mix. You can't get a great mix as an audio engineer if you can't hear. If you are a singer, you got to take care of them vocals, because when you sing live and you can't hit them notes, auto-tune not going to save you if you don't have vocals. If you are a producer and somebody called you to make a beat on the spot, you got to be able to make that beat on the spot. So you have to be at, I'm not going to use the word peak level, but you have to know how to perform at a high level at any given time. So it takes rest. So I go back to the situation I was talking about, procrastination. Sometimes you can give yourself 24 hours. Sometimes you can give yourself the opportunity to get rest. But at the end of the day, you gotta get it done. I drop this podcast on a weekly basis. It looks easy. I'm doing a 1 hour podcast straight, no commercials, nothing. Yeah, it looks easy, but a lot of people don't realize what it takes to get into that mental game of recording a podcast. I'm going to post a throwback of when I did my first podcast. It was either in 2020 or 2021. I don't know. I think it was 2020. I'm not sure. But long story short, this podcast was never released. I got the audio, I got the video clips, I got everything. I didn't follow through with it. Procrastination. So it took me about 2 years just to release my podcast after I had 2 episodes already recorded because of procrastination. And for me to record my first podcast, it was so difficult because I had to get my head in the game. I'm 5 episodes in. Just for me to do this and record these podcasts, I have to keep my head in the game. So it's like being a writer and having writer's block. I read an article about that, and they said, man, when you're a writer, you got to challenge yourself to write daily. If you don't, you're not going to do it. If you are an entrepreneur, you have to challenge yourself to read 30 minutes a day. They say if you read 30 minutes a day, you can read 1 book per week, and you can read 52 books per year. And they say if you read 52 books per year, I think that's the equivalent of getting a college education or a degree every year, just reading 30 minutes a day. And it was like if you listen to audiobooks for the time that you're stuck in traffic, same results. It's like you're getting a new degree every year for the low. I just kind of added that in. That wasn't in that article. So you can kind of see that you don't have to do a lot a lot of times you just have to be consistent. And a little bit of consistency goes a long way, especially if you have a job or career and you take this music seriously and you want to grow it. You got to stay focused. So last thing I would say, you have to stay grounded. I like Kendrick Lamar's song. It was a hit. He said, "Sit down and be humble." Whew. Man, that's something I'm telling you. You can't go around here thinking that you're all that, man. I got an opportunity to meet somebody, a big artist, man. I worked an event as an audio stagehand, and the artist came off stage. I was sitting backstage, chilling, minding my own business, and the artist made sure that he went out his way to greet everybody that was backstage, all the stagehands, and he made sure that he shook everyone's hand. Did he have to do that? No. He could have just waved, did the head nod, like, "Hey, I see you, bro." And to me, that would have been sufficient. Or even if he just walked by, if he was focused, because keep in mind, he had to go back on stage. I would not have held it against him. But when you are an artist, when you are in this game, you have to stay grounded. You can't have the big head. You can't be puffed up. You can't think that you're all that, because the thing is, all this fame is going to disappear. You aren't always going to be number one on the charts. As a matter of fact, you may not ever be number one on the charts. I work with bands all the time who I don't even know, but a lot of other people do. And they have been making money consistently, just say like a full-time income over a span of like 40 years. Still making money to this day, going to keep making money. And when you see that their demeanor, man, these people are, for one, they're gifted, they're talented, they're putting the work in, they're out there doing shows, they have merch. That's very important. You're artists. I need to say this every episode of the podcast. You weren't making money off record sales. If you're an artist, I'll just add this in there. Get you a vinyl press. That's what's making the money right now. CDs aren't selling. You're getting little to anything off streams. Streams are important because people have to listen to your music. But I'm telling you, that's not going to get you paid. Shows, merch, that's going to get you paid. Have something for the fans that's tangible. And I think that's why vinyl is so popular. Anyway, you meet these artists in person. These artists are not bragging. These artists are not puffed up. These artists are not hiding from the fans. They're out in the audience. They're shaking hands. They're at the merch table. These artists are approachable. These artists, they want to talk to fans. They aren't hiding behind this image, or they're just so big they don't have to be buttholes. I'm telling you, if you're making money off music, I shared the stats. I talked about it briefly on my last podcast, but I shared it on my blog, on my website. Go read it. Making money off of your music is very rare. If you make $1 off your music, trust me, that's very rare. So you have to be thankful that you are in this game and have the ability to do music, because everybody doesn't. So if you are part of the lucky ones, a part of the elite few. You can't take it for granted. You can't be puffed up, because you have to look at it like, I get the opportunity to live my dream and do what people really want to do. And it's a great feeling. You can't look at music like it's a job, man, because music to me is not a job. Music to me is not a hobby. Music isn't just a lifestyle. You get an opportunity to be creative, and you get an opportunity to express who you are. So if you stay grounded, you don't have the big head, keep a level head, and you'll be able to have a steady, consistent path in the industry. When I say keep your head in the game, they can relate, I guess, a little bit to mental health. And maybe one podcast will have a professional person to really talk about mental health, because that person is not me. But I can share the things that help me keep my mental game right. And that's staying grounded, showing gratitude, just saying the word thank you, saying I appreciate it. Just wake up in the morning. When you pray a prayer of thanks, and saying what you're thankful for. I know where I'm going in the future. I have goals, I have aspirations, but I know where I am now. I don't take where I am now for granted. I don't take having 7 or 8 YouTube subscribers for granted. I look at the numbers that's coming to my website. I don't take that for granted. I know who I'm connected to. I know who I work with. I don't take that for granted, because I work so hard to get there. But if you don't stay grounded when you accomplish that goal, you can feel so empty on the inside. You can feel depression. You can feel loneliness. But expressing an attitude of gratitude, that's the secret of being happy. That helps you to be consistent and stay in the game. I'm telling you, mental health doesn't mean that you're happy all the time, because when people come into the music industry, they just want to be up here all the time. People want to be turned up all the time. People don't ever want to have downs. But even when you have good mental health, you're going to be happy sometimes. You're going to be sad sometimes. It's like a stock. Stock isn't going to always be up all the time. A stock isn't always going to be down all the time. But you can be consistent where you can keep your composure. Man, you may be depressed. You may have things going on. You may be tired. You may be going through a financial struggle. And let's keep it real, as artists, as engineers and producers, nobody is a millionaire right now. Nobody is a millionaire. So that means that in some way, everyone is broke, because statistics show you can make a 6-figure income after taxes and still live from paycheck to paycheck. So somebody told me probably back in 2015, they said you can make $200,000 and be broke, because he explained it like this. He say, okay, you make $200,000, you spending money. You hadn't got to the point where you can just save money and it multiply and just make money on top of money. This guy makes hundreds of $1,000s. So I trust his opinion. I haven't gotten to that level yet, but I'm getting there. I believe that that people who are listening to this podcast is going to get there. So let's quit capping. I mean, rappers are acting like they're making all this money, but they make jobs, but they work jobs. Let's be real. Nobody is really pulling in this big money. So let's just be real and let's just keep it real and let's just tell each other the truth. We're all trying to get there. So don't be depressed if you are in this game, you work a job, and you're spending your extra money to go to the studio. Don't be discouraged if you are an audio engineer, if you are a producer, and you're spending your disposable income or your extra money on gear. We all go through that same struggle. But the thing is, you have to stay grounded. You got to stay consistent. And you got to have goals and know that if you keep grinding, you're going to get there. You got to keep your head in the game. Don't let life events make you lose your focus. I remember when I was growing up and we had Behind the Music on VH1, used to be popular, and every artist, they told their backstory on there. You like when they were coming up, man, they had a catastrophic loss, but they kept going. 50 Cent is so popular because when he was coming up, he had a catastrophic event happen to him, but he kept going. Kanye West, everybody knows this story. He had an event happen to him, but he kept going. In any story, any movie that you watch, a good story is when someone goes through a loss, but they pull through it and they get back up. So when I say keep your head in the game, I mean, you have to stay consistent. You have to keep going. You can't let life hit you where you quit doing music. If you are an engineer, I will tell you from experience, never quit music and sell all of your gear. Like, do not do it. It's some pieces of gear that I sold for a price when I got out of music. If I would have kept those pieces of gear, they would have appreciated higher than a stock market. I mean, I've had an Avalon channel strip. If I would have had that now, it'd be worth over $3,000. But I sold it and now I'm trying to buy another one. Trust me. Don't get out of music and sell all of your gear. That's not the answer. You gotta keep your head in the game. If you're a singer, you know you love music. You know that you're passionate about music. Do not quit singing. If you love to sing and you can actually hold the key, because let's be real, everybody isn't gifted to sing. If you're a lead singer, if you're trying to be lead and you really can't hold it down, be a background singer. That's what makes you happy. And I'm not saying that to insult anybody. You just have to know where you fit in. If you are a singer, you know how to sing, don't quit singing, because when you quit, it's going to make it hard. If you need to take a 1 week vacation and get your head back in the game, do that. If that's what makes you happy, don't give up singing for a job or for any other reason, for a relationship or whatever. If you're a producer, same goes to you. If you are a producer, you make beats, Don't quit making beats because you may be in a bad market and people aren't paying you money for your beats. Keep making those beats. May only be getting $99, may only be getting $200. Keep making those beats because the more you keep making those beats, the better you're going to get good at it. The more your stock is going to go up. Anybody who knows financials is familiar with the term is called dollar cost averaging. You dollar cost average, it means that you're going to make a contribution, just say for instance, on a monthly basis, bi-weekly basis out of your paycheck, regardless of what the market is doing, because the logic is over a longer period of time, you're going to make more money than if you contribute when you feel like it. Music is the same way. You have to be able to contribute and put work in when you don't feel like it. Every day you aren't going to feel like you're killing it. You ain't going to feel like training every day. You're not going to feel like practicing every day. Gotta write them bars every day. You may not feel like you're focused every day. You have to know what works for you. Working 30-minute bursts, work for 30 minutes, rest for 5 or 10, and then work again for 30 minutes. That may be a good formula that works for somebody. And regardless of what happened, regardless of what the comment section say, you got to stay grounded. Man, the like button is addictive for a reason, man. When you start getting likes, this, that, and the other, don't start getting puffed up by those likes. You got to stay grounded. You got to stay humble. Got to remember where you come from. That's why I tell people all the time, I'm from Jackson, Mississippi. I'll never forget my start. I'm going to give shout outs and tell my story and tell people where I come from, because a lot of people who come where I come from don't make it to where I am today. And music has always been my outlet, and I'm grateful for this gift. So to my audience, what I really want to tell my audience before this podcast is over, like, you can do it. Keep pressing forward, keep working, rest if you need to. But I know that everyone who's listening to this podcast who want to take their craft to the next level and do that work, I know that you can do it. So this is the end of the podcast. I'm about to end it. We coming up on end of the hour. So if you listen to this podcast, make sure that you join the conversation. Like it, share it, and tag me, inbox me, email me, let me know that you listen to the podcast. And if there's any way that I can help anybody, just let me know. But I will see you on the next podcast. Thanks for listening.